So it is Saturday, November the 16th of 2013. The Unitarian Church of Montreal is having its annual fundraising auction known as Bid Night, and I am engaged in my alternative spiritual practice of protesting against Unitarian Universalist injustices and abuses, including but not limited to the anti-religious intolerance and bigotry of intolerant atheists in the Unitarian Universalist religious community, and clergy abuse, clergy misconduct of all kinds, both sexual and non-sexual. In my case, the two issues are intimately interrelated because Reverend Ray Drennan was one of those anti-religious atheists, and he obviously was Unitarian Universalist clergy. So his clergy misconduct of a non-sexual nature included anti-religious intolerance and bigotry and related verbal and psychological abuse, slander, and so on. So yeah, Reverend Ray Drennan combines those two issues, and he's not the only Unitarian Universalist minister who has engaged in anti-religious intolerance and bigotry. But then again, you know, it's not just the clergy. We're also talking about lay people, non-clergy Unitarian Universalists engaging in anti-religious intolerance and bigotry too. It's not just the clergy that I'm concerned about. So the fact of the matter is that a certain clique of the Unitarian Church of Montreal were definitely of the anti-religious atheist variety, and that includes at least one president of the Unitarian Church of Montreal, Frank Green. And I'm not sure if I need to lump John Inder in there, but he nonetheless did falsely and maliciously label Creation Day as a cult to my face. So even if he's not the worst anti-religious bigot at the Unitarian Church of Montreal, he's nonetheless guilty of a certain amount of anti-religious intolerance and bigotry. And he's certainly guilty of not only failing miserably to ensure that this conflict was responsibly handled by the church, but no, on the contrary, he is actually very responsible for the unjust and inequitable manner in which the Unitarian Church of Montreal responded to my complaints and to my protest. In fact, John Inder was vice president of the Unitarian Church of Montreal at the time that I was initially kicked out of the church. In fact, it was John Inder who handed me the letter informing of my expulsion if he didn't actually write it. So, in any case, shucks. I got tripped on a little wire here. Yep, okay. These things happen. It's not going to happen anymore because I just detached it. So that's the first minor accident that I've had tonight. But yeah, I could have gone flying there. Just stepped off the sidewalk onto a pallet to make way for people, and didn't realize that it had a metal band along one side of it. So when I stepped off, I snagged it. So that's that. Anywho, it's quite a pleasant mid-November evening or night. Temperature's a little on the cool side, but Not really cold per se. Pleasant coolness. Clear sky, full moon. Earlier we had Venus in the west. I think it's pretty well set now though. Alright, what's all this? Okay, a bunch of people. So, a little group. I got a feeling they have nothing to do with the church. But, anyhow, definitely had a quite successful protest in terms of positive, uplifting, supportive conversations with members of the public. No less than 3 of them, and more like 4 or 5. So that's right. That nice smile there, along with an affirmative nod. So we got a lot of that kind of thing too. But I'm talking about fairly lengthy conversations.
You're gonna quit, man.
What?
When are you gonna quit?
I'll quit when they admit to engaging in bullying and bigotry. What? Drop dead? Well, thank you so much for respecting my inherent worth and dignity, sir.
I just don't.
What? I can't hear you. So, that's actually the first clearly negative response of the evening. The guy tells me to drop dead. He is not a familiar face. In other words, it's not someone that I see on Sundays coming to the church. He may not even be a member of the church. Could be, male partner of someone who is a member or something like that who's coming to the midnight or whatever. Could be the janitor for all I know. But nonetheless, the guy sure didn't like to see my picket signs and basically wants to know what I'm going to give up. And I answered his question. I said, well, the protest will end when the Unitarian Church of Montreal and other responsible Unitarian Universalists, such as the Unitarian Universalist Association down in Boston, admit to their wrongdoing, which includes, but is not limited to, bullying of all kinds, that is verbal and psychological bullying, a few cases of physical bullying on the part of Montreal Unitarians who weren't happy with my protest and assaulted me. Bigotry, no shortage of anti-religious intolerance and bigotry. I'm not even talking about the anti-Republican bigotry of a certain number of American Unitarian Universalists. But my main concern was and still is the anti-religious intolerance and bigotry. Although I can't say I'm impressed with the anti-Republican bigotry either. I mean, there's nothing wrong with being critical of Republicans, but when it descends into pure bigotry, well, it's just not right, especially, for a religious community and especially for clergy. When a Unitarian Universalist minister writes a blog post and the title is, "Oh my God, mean people do suck," and then goes on to say, "And I saw a whole bunch of really mean people last night," and then says Republicans, well, that's bigotry. It's really taking things too far. I mean, imagine if, this minister had written, Jews or Muslims or African Americans or whatever instead of Republicans. I don't think it would go over very well to say, that whatever, fill in the blank group are a bunch of really mean people who do suck. That is the upshot of her blog post title. And yet, when I complained about this minister's anti-Republican bigotry, which, by the way, included some other, very nasty, catty remarks about Sarah Palin. Again, I'm not opposed to criticizing Sarah Palin or even making a bit of fun of her or whatever, but But this minister was just incredibly catty in her attack on Sarah Palin in this blog post. You know, so when I complained about this to the Unitarian Universalist Association, well, they just totally ignored my complaint. You know, they did absolutely nothing at all. They didn't even acknowledge receipt of it, and nothing happened. And then later, I'm accused of sexual harassment of Unitarian Universalist minister by the UUA because I used the colloquialism sucks and blows at the same time to describe this Unitarian Universalist minister's hypocrisy. And of course I did use that colloquialism because the UUA had approved the fact that this other minister, Reverend Cynthia P. Kane, you know, had said that Republicans are really mean people who do suck. And on top of that, the UUA had turned a blind eye to the Rob and Edgar Sucks blog. I mean, I didn't actually file an official complaint about the Rob and Edgar Sucks blog, but I did bring it to their attention. So because the UUA had on 2 occasions turned a blind eye to Unitarian Universalists saying people suck, and they weren't talking about sucking in air, you can be sure, I decided to give them a little poke with the term sucks and blows at the same time, which is talking about sucking in air and blowing out air. It has nothing to do with sexual connotations of the word suck, or blows for that matter. It's purely about sucking in air, blowing out air, 2 contradictory actions at the same time. Nonetheless, you know, when I use this phrase to describe the Unitarian Universalist minister's hypocrisy, I get served with a cease and desist demand letter accusing me of sexually harassing this minister because I said she sucks and blows at the same time. So, basically, as a result of that, I resubmitted my complaint against Reverend Cynthia P. Kane for her anti-Republican bigotry, in which she basically said every single Republican sucks. And again, she wasn't talking about air there. What I basically sent in the exact same complaint, but I added to it that, well, you know, since you believe that the term sucks and blows at the same time constitutes sexual harassment, then logically, you know, you have to believe that the Reverend Cynthia P. Kane is sexually harassing the whole Republican Party, including Sarah Palin and Mitt Romney, by saying that they're really mean people who suck. Well, that was kind of interesting because although I got no official response from the UUA, nonetheless, Reverend Cynthia P. Kane's blog post, which had been on the internet for some years, magically disappeared. And, you know, I never heard anything more, but basically she deleted the blog post sometime after I had accused her of sexual harassment of the whole Republican Party. So, yes, that was kind of fun. And I'm sure the UUA got a little message. Anyhow, there's always some entertaining aspects of this thing. I'm getting a little hungry here, and I see some people in the lobby. But yeah, I basically, since I've stuck it out this long, I might as well stick it out until people leave. So I'll stick around until that happens. But I think I will grab a bite soon afterwards. Let's see now, 7:38. It could be a little while yet before they start coming out, because if I remember correctly, there was something at 5, then there was something else at 6, and if I'm not mistaken, there was also something happening at 7. Well, I could be wrong about that. So then it's a question of, how long it goes on after 7 o'clock. We'll stick around till 8-ish, maybe even 8:30. It's actually been well worthwhile to be here. Had some very good conversations with sympathetic and supportive members of the public. And what's good is that these are recorded, that I can put them on YouTube, show Unitarian Universalists that, hey, guess what, while you're in there doing your thing, I'm out here and the public are supporting me. The public actually agree with the reasons for this protest. So it's really quite foolish for you to ignore this protest. I think a lot of Unitarian Universalists have no clue as to the amount of public support that I do get. Now, I'm not saying that I've got flocks and flocks of people supporting me, but the point being is that those people who do take the time to ask what the protest is about and listen to my response to their questions almost overwhelmingly express support for the protest. In fact, I cannot remember ever having a negative response from someone who has actually wanted an explanation for the protest. Most of the people who respond negatively are people who don't even ask what it's about. So, and as I've mentioned before, even of those people who condemn the protest, from the get-go, on the few occasions where I've actually been able to discuss it with them, a good number of them have changed their minds. In other words, they started off negative, condemning, and then when I was able to explain the protest, why I'm protesting, what it's for, what it's about, they changed their mind to being positive and supportive. I'm not saying this has happened many, many times, but it has happened a few times. And basically, it hasn't been possible to engage the naysayers all that much. So in terms of the times that I've been able to engage them and explain, what the protest is about, a pretty high number have changed their minds. So on that note, we'll just continue circulating. But I have to say that tonight's protest, in terms of interactions with the public, and for the most part, young people, we're talking people, in their 20s, maybe 30s, for the most part, that I've spoken with, have been positive and supportive and basically said right on kind of thing. So it's been very positive in that sense. And yes, we have looks like a completely full moon. If it's not completely full, it will be tomorrow. But I have a feeling it's probably full tonight from the look of things. So I missed, excuse me, a little tired here. I normally try to get a nice photograph of the rising full moon, but for various reasons missed it earlier. But then again, there was cloud lower on the horizon, so I'm not sure I would have got much anyway. Yep. You know, even when I don't have an actual conversation with people, I often get positive, supportive responses. You know, a thumbs up, a friendly wave, a nice smile, a pleasant good day, and so on. You know, the conversations are kind of the icing on the cake in terms of positive public response, or maybe they're the cake in the sense that they're the most substantial part of it. You know, but essentially what I'm saying here is that I actually get far more positive response, you know, in the form of a brief thumbs up or a honk of a horn or so on. In other words, no real conversation involved than the actual conversations. You know, the conversations are great, but for every conversation I have that's supportive, there's probably, I'm not even going to guess the number, but a good number of other people who just express their support in other ways. As I said, thumbs up, honk of the horn, friendly wave and smile, maybe a brief word, you know, of support. The conversations are great because it allows to discuss the issues with perfect strangers for the most part. And so we're just really discussing the issues with someone who doesn't have any background. And as I said, you know, when I explain, you know, why I'm protesting, what it's about, you know, the two main issues, the anti-religious intolerance and bigotry of certain Unitarian Universalist atheists, and the clergy misconduct, you know, they're very much on side. And, you know, a lot of them do recognize that it's by no means limited to the Unitarian Church of Montreal. You know, they see the broader issues, and that's, you know, one of the reasons why I continue this protest, because when I'm doing it, yes, you know, I am targeting the Unitarian Church of Montreal as an institution. Yes, I am targeting the UUA as an institution. Yes, I am targeting the larger Unitarian Universalist religious community, but at the same time, you know, when I'm talking about intolerance and bigotry, when I'm talking about clergy abuse and institutional cover-up and denial thereof, well, these are general issues that apply to other religions, other churches, and so on, other institutions. You know, as somebody mentioned in one of the conversations, you know, tonight, you know, it's not just churches where this type of thing happens. It's other institutions. It's, you know, professional organizations. You know, we can talk about doctors and malpractice and how doctors who engage in malpractice are often protected, and so on. So as I said, when I engage in this protest, I am targeting the Unitarian Church for sure, but I'm also raising concerns, you know, in a broader sense. So I think it's well worthwhile. It's basically reminding people of institutional cover-up and denial, amongst other things. And it really doesn't get more ludicrous than the Unitarian Universalist Association accusing me of the crime of blasphemous libel in an effort to cover up and hide the fact that a certain number of Unitarian Universalists have engaged in such despicable crimes as pedophilia and rape, to borrow a phrase from Stikeman Elliott attorney, Maitre Marc-Andre Coulomb. We've already spoken about it a few times tonight, but it doesn't hurt to rehash it in another video. Last June, I received an email from Stikeman Elliott Barristers and Solicitors, litigation lawyer, Maitre Marc-Andre Coulomb, on Friday, June 1st, if I remember correctly. And in that letter, a variety of accusations against me on behalf of the Unitarian Universalist Association and a couple of Unitarian Universalist ministers. And the most serious, and yet at the same time the most ludicrous accusation was that I was guilty of the crime of blasphemous libel for allegedly making unfounded and vicious allegations to the effect that ministers of the association engage in such despicable crimes as pedophilia and rape. So that's pretty well an exact quote from the letter. So I'm being accused of making unfounded allegations about Unitarian Universalist ministers committing the crimes known as pedophilia and rape. And so yes, I have in fact blogged about some cases of pedophilia and or rape. And I was being told to take down blog posts. The thing is, you know, as far as I'm concerned, the cases that I blogged about are by no means unfounded. You know, I'm blogging about Unitarian Universalists who, according to newspaper reports and so on, were actually convicted of such despicable crimes as pedophilia and or rape. So I wrote back to Maître Marc-André Coulombe, letting him know that I was unable to find or having difficulty finding any blog posts matching his description of unfounded and vicious allegations to the effect that ministers of the association engage in such despicable crimes as pedophilia and rape. And I asked Maître Coulombe to please provide the titles of the blog posts that he was talking about, or to provide the URL for the blog post, that is the web address of the blog post, or at least, you know, give me a date or something, you know, to help me find these allegedly unfounded and vicious allegations that he was accusing me of making. And he wrote back to me very quickly, very arrogantly, very aggressively, and essentially said, you know perfectly well, you know, where that material is, you go find it. Those aren't the exact words, but that was the upshot of his letter. He refused to identify the blog posts that he was claiming were unfounded and vicious allegations, yada, 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 and insisted that I find them. So I had to write back to Maître Coulombe and explain to him that, well, look, I do know where I've made some blog posts about Unitarian Universalists engaging in such despicable crimes as pedophilia and rape, but they are by no means unfounded. So you need to show me, you know, where the unfounded ones are. You know, I know where the well-founded stuff is. You're saying there's unfounded and vicious stuff. Well, you need to identify what you are claiming to be unfounded and vicious allegations about Unitarian Universalist ministers engaging in such despicable crimes as pedophilia and rape. Well, I haven't heard from him since. So I guess that's a pretty clear indication that he had no clue what he was talking about when he accused me of making unfounded and vicious allegations, or worse, he was lying. You know, he clearly said that, you know, actually now that I remember actually the letter, you know, when he wrote back to me, he said that my